Hi, my name's Ian Wallace. I call myself the Messed Up Counsellor, which is quite an intriguing name. And the podcast you're about to see is one of many, and we've been doing about a year now. So you can look back and see all the things we've talked about with guests and on my own over the process. A lot of the information I use in the podcast initially came from the first book I wrote in 2011. Why do we do that? What do we do about it? And that came out and was the basis of all my learning, understanding at that time, which is going back a few years now. And that process of understanding how the world works for people, how we can alter, change, and adapt it, was kind of what it was there to do with the initial stages. I've made that now an audiobook as well, so it's available on Amazon as an audio file that you can check out and you can download to your heart's content, and hopefully that will be helpful. In the podcasts, we're trying to look at all sorts of things that about human interactions, human dynamics, the world, and how we might understand it more or change it more. So it gives you lots of ideas and tools in order to think about and look at different ways of being or dealing with things. And hopefully that brings people together and makes people more able to connect and communicate. Lots of topics. If you ever want to connect to me, just obviously drop me a comment on the podcast and I shall try as much as possible to reply. And if you've got any ideas of things that we might want to use on the podcasts, then please let me know. My name's Ian Wallace. Thanks for looking and thanks for listening. So, hi, my name's Ian Wallace. I'm a Messed Up Counsellor. What I'm looking at today is something that came up within one of the sessions I was having recently. There seemed to be a process of the relationship. And remember, a relationship isn't just a sexual or a loving relationship in the sense of partners. It can be friends or it can be family. Yeah. There was always conflict with both parties, not one party, both parties. And they were trying to work out what it was that the conflict did, what it gave them, what process, what function did it have. And we were having a conversation around this. And it seemed like that the people involved needed that conflict in order to make them feel energized, made them feel alive, made them feel as though they were in a interactive, connected process. Now, you can see it in kids. Sometimes they will challenge boundaries, certainly teenagers, obviously, but even younger kids. And it feels like they always want to create drama. They always want to create conflict or possible conflict. And parents and people trying to get their heads around this. Why do they do this? They don't need to do that. And usually it's because they don't feel as though their world is secure and safe. Yeah, I talk about insecurity an awful lot. And even one of the books is Insecurity. It's all about me. And it is true that when people are feeling insecure, sometimes they need to instill that energy, that conflict, that pushing boundaries, in order to kind of see that they're alive, that they're working well. Now, it's really hard to get your head around this. People, when they're in an argument, they might say, "Get out of here, I never want to see you again," Now, if you take that message as being the truth, then you'll probably leave. And get out of here, I don't want to see you again. So you probably do what they say. But actually what they may be wanting to say, which they feel very insecure about, is how much are you going to fight to stay in this relationship? How much are you going to show me that you care? How much are you showing me that I'm important? That you want to stay? Now that sounds really weird process. And certainly if you're in it and somebody's saying that to you, I would imagine your emotions are running and you'll probably leave. You probably won't stay and say that. But the person who's saying, get out of here, I never want to see you again, they're usually feeling insecure. They probably want a connection. So I'm not saying that's always true, usually. But if they do want a connection, then maybe staying, but not in conflict, obviously, where there's physical violence or shouting or screaming, but finding a way that helps to understand the process that's going on. Now, you'll get couples that will create conflict, drama between the two people because they're both insecure in the relationship, or both insecure in their worlds and their lives, maybe not the relationship necessarily. So when we're creating drama, when we're creating those kind of processes of heightened emotional connection, conflict, we will ramp it up and ramp it up and ramp it up until we either get out of there because the conflict's too much, or we find ourselves feeling safe and secure again. When people are having arguments and creating conflict, they're usually trying to create space with their words. They're trying to push people away because they feel that they're too vulnerable, or they feel that they can't cope with whatever it is they're going through. And you'll see this all sorts of ways in different relationships, in different processes, that people push people away with their words. Now, obviously, the person who's receiving those words usually are very upset by them. And people will do that in all sorts of different ways. So, put-downs, basically, are a way of creating space, creating a distance between you and the other person because of your insecurity. So when we see that, when we're in relationships where that's occurring, then if we can try to provide the security and safety of the relationship by having honest conversations about the relationship, about the dynamics, about what's going on, then we're more likely to have a better connection. Communication is everything. Quality communication, positive communication, effective communication, whatever you want to call that, is the way forward. Because if we can talk about our insecurities, our processes, then we'll feel more safe, more secure, because the other person hopefully listens, understands, tries to adopt a different style, a different attitude, a different relationship, and then we shouldn't want to have conflict. But when both people are insecure, for whatever reason, either in their world, their life, and sometimes that's why when we go through a grief process where people have died, families kind of distance themselves from each other, because that conflict that they enact with is trying to give them space, trying to make it easier and more secure in the world, which seems a strange combination of processes, but human beings are strange in a sense. So if we try to have a communication, a conversation about the process and what's going on and how we feel about it and where we are, and try and be honest about it, then the more likelihood is that we don't have to derive conflict or drama. We can be safe and secure. Not an easy one. Not an easy one. Trying to tell somebody else that we're vulnerable and we need them and we want them is a really, really hard thing to do for most human beings. And the reason being, because we've probably learned that if we do that, if we create that understanding, then people might take advantage of us. They might use it against us. They might be able to harm us even further. So it's really hard to kind of be that vulnerable in a relationship and say how you feel. The process, though, if we don't do that, usually creates misunderstanding, conflict, drama, arguments, sometimes physical processes. And if we can do that, if we can say that we are feeling vulnerable, we want this person, but not on their terms, obviously. We want this person for what we need, and they can supply that need, whatever it is. Then we're more likely to have less conflict in our worlds and our lives in that relationship. But there are some people who need to have drama. They crave that intensity of feeling, intensity of emotional high, if you like. It can be a bit like a drug in that sense. And once we've got that high, once we've got that process, and we get used to it, then like any addictive process that gives us that high, we need more and more and more of it. So we create more and more conflict in more and more different relationships. And moving forward in that is not easy to come out of. It really isn't. Because if we've got used to it, if it's been a part of our world for a long period of time, then likelihood is it's not going to be an easy thing to change, as with most behavioural processes that we engage with. But we need to understand what things are. We need to be aware of why we do what we do in order to change anything. And if we don't look at these things and understand why, what is behind it, what we're trying to achieve, or what it is connecting to, then chances are we won't change it. Because how can you change something that is just what you do unless you're aware that it has a negative impact or how it works? And this process of conflict and this heightened sense of intensity of feelings and emotions, this kind of like addictive drug kind of process, won't necessarily help ongoing. I usually find that if somebody's got an addictive behavioural process, whatever it is, then they tend to find it's like a speeding train with no brake. It kind of gets faster and faster and faster and faster until at some point it will come off the rails because it can't stay on the rails. It's going too fast. Might come for a bend. Can't stay on the rails. So this process of drama usually will create a distancing at some point or a detachment at some point because there's no way that it can be anything else. So either one person will leave or the person that is creating the conflict might leave. But they can't be in the same place at the same time all the time. What that does, usually it creates more and more insecurity because I don't know if this person's going to stay. So the person that leaves creates the space, finds that calming down period or whatever. But if the other person doesn't know if they're going to come back or when they're going to come back, then that will just ramp up their anxiety, their fears, their worries, their concerns. And then when you do come back, it's likely it's going to set off just exactly the same as when you left. Because the other person then will be in that insecure process. So it tends to go around in a cycle. It's an action-reaction process. And if we're trying to get that intensity of feeling, then it's hard, as I've said, to not do it because it makes us feel that energy, for want of a better word. But if we keep on doing it, we're not going to go anywhere because it's going to eventually destroy whatever it is. So we need to create a more calming approach, and we do that only by talking about our vulnerabilities. But that's very hard, as I've said. But it is the way forward. Because without that communication, without that conversation, without that understanding and being aware of what's going on, the more likely is that it'll just keep on going. So when I'm working with people where drama has to be a part of their world, their life, then I have to get them to understand or look at or share what it is that they're really trying to achieve, what it is that's fueling it. And then, hopefully, we can look at different ways of being. We can use different communication structures, different ways, tools, in order to externalize that without it creating this conflict. It's not easy. Human beings, generally speaking, are fairly simple. We are. We don't want an awful lot usually. But we make our worlds massively complicated in order to create that security. So when we're working with this process, we need to kind of come back to, as with all things, communications, conversations, understanding. And if we can do that, we've got a chance. In the room, when I'm working with couples, then I will put these things in when people are creating conflict in the room. I will stop the process. I will say, is this what you want to do? And they will look at me, possibly shaken or shaking, depending on how much conflict's in the room. And I'll say, well, you're paying me to come here to have these sessions. What you've just done for the last 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever time it's been going on for, is what you could do at home. And you probably do. So would it be right if I sit here, getting paid, to not provide another outcome? This is a very expensive room to have an argument, which it is. So my job is to create difference, is to create a connection, is to create communication, is to create an outcome, is to create a goal. And usually the goal is to not wanting to argue, not wanting to have conflict. So if I put that in there in the room, it's not an easy one from a counsellor, and any counsellors watching this will know this, to integrate that into a session with a couple. But our couple work is always with conflicts. There is something not working, something not happening. There's usually conflict in the relationship process somewhere. So we have to be very brave as counsellors, and we have to be a bit more directive, a bit more interactive. We can't just sit there and let it happen. And I'm sure if there's any couple counsellors watching this, they will know what I'm talking about, because it's part of our world. But for people coming into couple work, people who've done that before, this can be a very strange process. In order to make that outcome happen, that we need to input, we need to interject, we need to create that stop process in some way, shape or form. So it's not easy, but it is part of the work. And as long as we understand that conflict is always going to be in a couple relationship if they come and see us in some way, shape or form, then it is the best thing you can do to stop that happening, to interject, to interact, to bring attention to it, which is kind of what we're doing, in a way that says, actually, do you want to do this? Because it's not necessarily going to be helpful. So if you see this drama between two people, or if you're one of the people in the drama, try and do it differently, because the drama probably is not going to really help you long term. Short term it might be okay, it might get some passion, some intensity, all those kind of things happening, bring the couple together in an argument, but it usually can't last, and eventually it will create some kind of distancing, some kind of rejection process. Hopefully that's made sense and it's been interesting for you to listen to or watch. And if you have any comments or anything about the podcast you want to put forward, then please write them and send me the message. And I'll do my best to try and reply or put it into one of the podcasts I do for other people to maybe see. My name's Ian Wallace. Have a nice day. Take care. Hi, thanks for listening to the podcast, and hopefully it made sense and was interesting for you. Please subscribe, like, and share. With the podcasts, you never know who will be helped by the things we talk about, things we share. We don't normally tell people our problems, but by sharing it and helping other people to understand things. The book Insecurity, It's All About Me, is also available now through Amazon. And it gives you an understanding of what drives insecurity, how insecurity works within our human dynamics, and how you can get a much more secure connection with people. It gives you lots of ideas and thoughts, which is really good. So thanks for listening. Subscribe, like, share, hit the button. And if you've got any comments, please give me them, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks very much. Take care.